Alrighty, welcome to the linear function station. A couple things to remember. There's a couple things to remember and a couple things we haven't really gone over. So a couple things to remember to start off with is that your standard form of a linear function is y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. So let's focus on slope and y-intercept for a little bit. So when we have slope, we have some linking words that link our slope with our x variable, right? Linking words are like per, each, and every. So this tells us that our m and x go together. Okay? And when we're talking about our y-intercept, that's where our starting point is, right? So that's like a base rate, flat fee, all that stuff. That's something that is there no matter what. And then that's where our line no. Hold up. That's where our line crosses our y-axis. And then so it's easiest to get our equations into this form because we know like what everything means and where everything is. Some other things that we haven't necessarily gone over, so we didn't really spend any time on inequalities. You solve an inequality the same way that you solve an equation, except when you multiply or divide by a negative number, you have to switch the sign. And when I mean flip the sign, I mean like if I have negative 3x is less than 18, right? If I have to divide by this negative 3, I need to flip this inequality sign, right? So that would cancel out. I have x, now I'm flipping my sign, is greater than negative 6. And that's because I had to divide by a negative number. And the same if we have to multiply both sides by a negative number. You're just flipping this inequality sign. If you're making a graph and it has an inequality, if it's just a greater than or less than sign, then you have a dotted line. And if it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to, then it's going to be a solid line, right? So that means that for this one, your solutions can't be on your line, and for this one, solutions can be on your line. I wouldn't really worry too much about that. The main thing is knowing like y equals mx plus b. You can know that without the equal to underneath, and it would be dotted, and with it, it would be solid. That may help you with some problems. Something else to remember is when we're talking about slope. So a positive slope goes up and a negative slope goes down. If we have, so let's say our slope equals 0, that would be a straight line. And if we have what's called an undefined slope, that would be a vertical line. Okay? So there's just 4 different slopes. And more at one slope, right? So how do we find slope, right? We have rise over run. So that's just like counting up a point. So this is how much we're going up or down, and this is how much we go over. When you're running, you're try to go like to the right, just so that you're not getting confused. Or if we need a formula, if we have 2 points, we're doing y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. And this is your formula for slope. So that's going to tell you what your m is. Some other formulas we didn't really spend any time on is our midpoint formula. Again, you're just plugging numbers in here, and a distance formula. I'll go over an example of each of those, and then y'all will have a chance to practice. But our midpoint formula is just x1 plus x2 divided by 2, comma, y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So again, you need 2 points here, and distance is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And you're just solving this. The last thing you're going to do here is take the square root. Alright, so you need to simplify all this inside first. And I'll show you in like our examples. So to start off, first problem, guided practice is an inequality. Whenever you see a percentage, you're going to need to turn this into a decimal. Alright, so we have to turn the 12 into a decimal. So the way that we do that is we start with our regular number. Alright, so I have 12. Right now my decimal point is after the 12. So if I'm turning this percentage into a decimal, I'm moving it left 2 spaces, right? So now it becomes 0.12. Alright, so now I'm looking at my question. I know, first my variable x is sales, right? I see a linking word here, so that's going to link 850 with hour, okay? Hour is not my variable here, so let's read. She works on 24 hours, so it actually tells me how many hours I'm going to have. But I know this 850 is going to be multiplied by this 24, so I'm just going to connect these two, okay? And then she earns 12% commission on all the sales she makes, so that connects this 12 to sales, right? But remember, this 12 is now 0.12, and our sales is our variable, so I know that's going to go with my x, okay? So now I'm looking, and it says, which best describe her sale if she earns at least, this is a key word, $324. So that means we want the little part of my inequality pointing to the 324. So I'm going to automatically rule out C and D, because I want this to be the least amount, and then she can earn more than that, right? And I know that my 850 is going to need to be multiplied by 24, so it's not going to still be 8.5. So let's double check what 850 times 24 is. I'm just going to plug it into my calculator. And yep, it's 204. So I'm just double checking to make sure this is my right answer. So we really didn't have to do too much work here, honestly. We're looking at our sign. And then just paying attention to what the problem is really telling us, okay? This says, Leslie used her new snowflake counting machine to record how quickly the snow was falling during a recent storm. The snow fell at 4 distinct rates, creating A, B, C, and D. It says, during which period did the snow fall at a rate that can be approximated by a linear function with a slope near 0? So remember, I told you before, a slope of 0 means a horizontal line. So automatically, we should know our answer is C here, right? Another part that we can pay attention to is the word linear, which just means it should be a straight line. So it wouldn't be B. This is kind of straight, but it's not really near 0. This is the one most near 0. And this is linear, but this has a negative slope. Okay? Next. Irene graphed the solution for the inequality shown, which provides the best description of how Irene graphed the solution. So this is what I was talking about. Pay attention to the inequality. And if there is no equals to underneath, that means it should be a dotted line. So automatically, we're going to cross out these ones that say solid line. Now it says, Irene graphed a dotted line for the equation and shaded above the line. Irene graphed a dotted line and shaded below. So it's asking us here, like, is y supposed to be greater than or less than? So because the mouth is facing the y, that means the y is going to be bigger than whatever this is. So if it's bigger, you're thinking positive, right? So think up or above. If it's less than, you're thinking negative, and you would be shading like below. So because this is a greater than sign, it's going to be positive. I'm going to shade above, just in case you didn't know. Now you know. Which point represents the midpoint? So, this is what I was talking about in our example. So first I'm going to label this point as point 1 and point 2. So my midpoint formula. I'm just going to rewrite it. So x1 plus x2 divided by 2. And then y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So my x is in my first spot. Okay. So I'm going to highlight my x's. I'm basically just adding them together and dividing by 2. So 10 plus negative 2 divided by 2. Then I'm going to look at my y's. I'm going to add them together and then divide by 2. So 3 plus negative 5 divided by 2. So what is 10 plus negative 2? It's the same as 10 minus 2, which would just be 8, and then divided by 2. And 3 plus negative 5 is the same as 3 minus 5, which would be negative 2 divided by 2. And now I'm just simplifying, so 8 divided by 2 is 4, and negative 2 divided by positive 2 is negative 1. So my answer should be A. So this is really simple. As long as you have 2 points, you're just plugging them in and solving. Okay. This one is asking for what is the distance, and again I have my 2 points. I'm going to label this one as 1 and this one as 2. This one might be a little more complicated, but first I'm going to start by just highlighting my x's and then highlighting my y's. Okay. I'll rewrite my distance formula, which is the square root of x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Okay, so first I'm going to plug in those values. x2, I'm going to say is 25 minus negative 15 squared, and then plus y2, negative 34 minus negative 4 squared. So remember, whenever we have a negative and a negative right next to each other, they're both going to turn into positives. So I'm going to turn both these negatives into positives. So 25 plus 15 gives me, what, 40? Yeah. So then the square root of 40 squared. I'm still going to have to square it, but now I'm going to simplify the other side. So negative 34 plus 4 is now going to be, I'm going to keep this one in parentheses, negative 30 squared. Alright, so now what's 40 squared? 40 times 40 is 1,600. Okay, and then what's negative 30 squared? So a negative times a negative is going to be a positive, so I know I'm going to be adding. And then 30 times 30 is 900. Next up, I need to add those two numbers together. So 900 plus 1,600 gives me 2,500. And then I need to find the square root of that, which is going to be 50. Okay, so my answer would be 50. Just plugging it in and simplifying one step at a time. Pause and rewatch the examples if you need to. Alright, so now go ahead, use your timer. Time how long it's going to take you to do these. Just be mindful of how much time you're spending on each problem. Remember the things you should know. This is just, you just solve it just like an equation. Just remember, flip your sign if you have to multiply or divide by a negative number. You need to make sense of this. What is it asking you? What is the equation you should be writing? And then solve for your variable. Look at the graph. What is the hourly pay rate? Rate is a key word here. Okay. Rate means same as something else. And then you're going to need to just continue out this table. And you're looking for 8 days. Now this is practice with what I just showed you, midpoint and distance. So if you need to go back and watch the other examples, go ahead and do that. And then I want you to evaluate some problems. So tell me why you're eliminating certain answer choices, how you know certain ones are wrong, and how you know the one you choose is right. Okay?